All right. So moderation made easy. So I wanted to, this is actually a piece of the macros to moderation mini course that I have given access to clients. I've done mini courses, I've offered it here and there over the years. It's probably one of my most popular mini courses that I have. But I wanted to give you guys something simple and break it down. So this is taking some of the most impactful tools from that mini course and doing it over a 3-day period of time to help you all learn to navigate this holiday season. The reality is that most people are going to gain anywhere from 6 to 8 pounds from Halloween through the end of the year. And unfortunately, most of those people are not going to lose that weight. And so that's how it just starts to compound. And the problem is that we have this mentality of either I've got a diet, right? It's that all or nothing. Like I've either got to be on some crazy diet or like it's the holidays, I'm going to eat whatever I want. And there is this middle ground. Now, I learned moderation about 5 years ago. This was after spending most of my life swinging from being very restrictive with my eating, and then swinging in 100% into overindulgence. I could not even tell you the number of times that I said to myself, I'm going to start fresh on Monday with the meal plan. Like I've done it too. I've done all of the things that you guys have probably done as well. I'm guilty. I did them too. And what kind of finally made me realize that I couldn't do this anymore was that I had been living by myself. I was dairy free, I was gluten free, I could control my environment. And I'm not gonna lie, I was in great shape and I felt great. But when Michael and I got together and we moved in together, he also was living with his then teenage son, and they had very, very different eating habits than me. And so I was now surrounded by pastries and cakes and all of these things that like I really like. Those were kind of my weakness. And so it became very, very difficult to be able to navigate that. And so it just really sent me into some serious like binge behavior. And it became very, very difficult to find that middle ground. And I found Moderation 365. I'll explain what this is here in just a second. About 5 years ago. And it's basically how I eat all the time now. So when you guys got this email of like, hey, yes, I did in fact lose some weight while I was in Italy, this is how I ate. And I'll actually give you the tools that I used in order to do this. So let's let's get you guys started. Sorry, I do have a little bit of a head cold, so I'm a little stuffy. So moderation made easy. This is going to help you navigate weekends, holidays, vacations. It's going to make it easier so that you can learn a lifestyle approach with your nutrition without having to always track and feel like you're on some kind of diet. Go through here. So Moderation 365 is the course that I took about 5 years ago. It's a method that helps you learn your own body and how it responds to certain foods so you can eat healthy and stress-free for good. So you're using cues from your body. And this is the course that I learned, and it is a practice. So don't think that like it's going to become automatic. It is a practice that you have to do over time. It took me probably a year to really be able to nail this stuff and get good at them. The moderation approach uses biofeedback tools such as hunger, energy, cravings. So instead of relying on having to count and track, it's minimizing the effort and the energy behind eating. So it's a more sustainable way of doing things. Now, I will tell you, I find that there is huge value in being able to food log, do some tracking, especially if you have a weight loss goal. I have my clients do it. There's value in that. However, I'm not the type of coach who believes that you should have to track your food forever and ever. Amen. I don't track my food all the time. I only do it during deficits. And then I live a moderation way of nutrition. So it gives you the ability to find that middle ground, but it gives you actual tools to use instead of just going, oh, intuitive eating. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So this goes to what it is not. Moderation is not intuitive eating. It is not a broad concept with no practical strategy. So I'm going to actually give you like actual tools to be able to help you navigate this. It's also not an excuse to eat like an asshole and then think that your physique is going to change magically somehow. So that is what it is not. Here are three basic tools that I'm going to give you today, and the strategies of how this is built. So the DIS scale is basically a deprivation to indulgence scale. So on one side you have deprivation where it's like I have to be perfect, and that's I've got to make sure that all of my foods are prepped, and I've got to make sure that my macros are on point, and I have to have it perfect. Well, the scale the will swing over to indulgence to I ruined it, I might as well go all out, right? Now, both are extremes, and the higher you swing on one side, you will swing equally as high on the other. So, what this looks like, and I can tell you just from experience, was for me, it was food prep, it was gluten free, dairy free, um, eliminating sugar. It was very diet behavior. And then by eliminating alcohol, it was is all kinds of deprivation on this side. And then what would happen is by Friday, I would be around like food that I liked, and I would slip up and have something, and then I would last supper my way through the weekend. Let me have the pizza. And I had this used to be a big one for me is I would go have like pizza or something like that, something really heavy. And then I would go to Dairy Queen and get a large blizzard and polish that off as well because, I might as well go all out. I got to get it in because I can't have that again for a long time. That's that mindset. So that's the swing. So we don't want to swing that far. Instead, we want moderate choices that are going to cut to that middle ground. It's not depriving, but it's also not overstuffing yourself. So, total mental load and DNCs. And here's what this looks like. Total mental load. Everything that we think about requires energy of your brain. Your brain requires more energy than any other system in your body. And so what we want to do is limit the amount of energy that we're spending thinking about food. So, in order to do that, the answer is becoming very discerning in your choices. And the reality is that not every nutrient decision carries the same weight in terms of actual outcome. Now, if you have been around me for a while, I used to tease about this all the time on social media and make jokes about ketchup. And people are like, there's sugar in ketchup. And I'm like, I promise you, it's not the ketchup. That's the problem. That is a nutrient decision that does not carry much weight in terms of your actual outcome. And so what happens is we can get very caught up in all of these things that maybe they matter, but they don't matter the most. We want to start to focus on the things that have the biggest impact. So here are just a couple of things that in the bigger grander scheme of things don't actually carry as much weight. How much sodium is in a food? Does it matter? Sure, especially if you have issues with sodium. In general, does it matter? No, there are things that matter more. Sweeteners, what kind of sweeteners you use. Nutrient timing, that's very, very individual. It's not, there's no broad answer to that. Different supplement fads that you see in terms of what you should be taking. They carry some weight, they matter a little bit, but they don't matter the most. The type of carbs, protein, and fats you're taking in. This is a big one, and this one usually will get me some pushback. Organic versus not. So grass fed versus not, wild caught versus farm. Are those options healthier? Sure. Do they matter? Sure. Do they carry the most amount of weight in terms of how they're going to affect your overall metabolic system and your ability to maintain a healthy body composition? They're not the most important thing. So you have to start to be discerning with where you're putting your energy. Additives and preservatives, healthy convenience foods versus making everything from scratch. So a lot of times you'll see this, and I have a lot of women who ask me, are just like, I don't know about protein powder because I know it's a processed food, and it is depending upon the protein source, mildly processed, of course. But in the bigger, grander scheme of things, if it helps you get your protein, that's probably more important than the fact that it's slightly processed. So we want to make sure that we're focused on the things that matter the most. So there are things that should not be granted the same amount of brain power. Food behaviors that have high impact are where we want to spend our focus. And how we do that is using daily nutritional commitments. Now, I have had clients do daily nutritional commitments. I'm going to walk you through how to do this. And they are commitments, they're not targets. And I'll explain like what this looks like. A daily nutritional commitment are three eating behaviors that keep us mostly on track. They're not perfect, and they should fit the three E's criteria, meaning that they should be enjoyable, they should be pretty effortless, and they should be effective in that they give you high impact. And we're going to talk about what that means in terms of being effective. But if you think about it, these are commitments. So they need to be things that you can absolutely do, even if you feel like you don't have a lot of control in what's going on around you. So if I choose a daily nutritional commitment that I don't like, chances are I'm not going to follow through that on a regular basis. So it should be something that is enjoyable. You have to like it. It should not take a lot of effort on your part. If it does, that's a lot of energy, right? We want to make it sure that it's very, very simple, and we want to make sure that it has high impact so that it's effective. So we want nutritional choices that have the most impact. And nutritional choices that have the most impact are going to impact your hunger, your cravings, your energy level, and your blood sugar. Those are the four things that we want to dial in on and go, okay, how can we eat in a way that keeps those things very, very balanced? That has the most impact. Well, there's three things that have the most impact, and that's going to be water, protein, and fiber. Those are the three things that are going to keep you most satiated. They're going to keep your blood sugar balanced. It's going to keep your energy levels stable. Those are the things that we really want to be able to focus on. Now, here's where a lot of people will, I'm just checking for chat questions. Here's the mistakes that I see people make when they're coming up with their daily nutritional commitments is I'll ask people for what they are, and they'll say, okay, I'm going to hit my protein target. How much fiber should I get? And so what they're doing is they're talking about targets. So like, for instance, I can tell you every day from a water perspective, I drink about 80 ounces of water every day. From a protein perspective, in general, I'd say probably 160 grams of protein plus per day. And fiber is always above 25, right? So anywhere from 25 to 40 grams of fiber per day. Those are targets. I can tell you when I was in Italy, I did not hit those marks. They're still targets, and I was still like working towards them, but I couldn't control them, right? Like, if you think about it, even protein, even though like we were on the coast for a little bit, I still could, there was no way that I was going to hit 160 grams of protein. Like, it just was not going to happen. Fiber, maybe. The water, maybe, but that gets to be pretty difficult. So there's targets that you still stay focused on, and then there's these nutritional commitments that you can control. And I'll give you some examples of that. They are implemented without hard rules, and they have flexibility built in so that you can navigate them in times where you feel like you don't have a lot of control. And then as for the rest, you just simply do your best. So again, I was in Italy. I'm still focused on protein. I'm still focused on getting fiber. I'm still focused on getting water, but I just did the best that I could with what I had, and then I let the rest go. And that's how this works. So here are examples of my DNC. So keep in mind, the goal is to focus on water, protein, and fiber so that we can manage blood sugar, energy, hunger, and cravings, right? So here are my DNCs, and I can tell you that they have evolved over time. I'll tell you the one thing that I did change a couple years ago. The first one of my DNCs. So keep in mind that meals are not in isolation. So in order to have the most impact, I focused on morning things. And it's what I recommend my clients do as well, is to focus on being able to get your blood sugar balanced first thing in the morning, because it will affect the rest of your day. So for me, what I do is I take my little Stanley everywhere I go. I can control this. I can take this with me anywhere. I can get bottled water anywhere I go. And so for me, before I do anything else, I make sure that I fill my Stanley up. I put BCAAs in my water first thing in the morning, branch chain amino acids. Some people will do um, electrolytes. I actually don't need electrolytes. I prefer BCAAs simply because I've been taking them for so long. But they really help to hydrate me first thing in the morning. So I'm getting that water in, and I'll drink probably 3/4 of this before I ever even have breakfast. And so I'm very hydrated. It helps wake me up. I'm very alert, and it's going to help keep my blood sugar more stable. And I can do this no matter where I go. When I go see my family in Arizona, I can take this with me. I've got water. When we went to Italy, I took it with me and we got bottled water. And so it's something simple that I can do no matter where I go. I can do this. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't say drink 80 ounces of water. I still drink lots of water, but this I can control. You guys see the difference? Okay, so that's the first one that I do. Second one is I make sure that I get at least 30 grams of protein for breakfast. This is not always easy. So I can tell you when I go to Arizona, they do not have protein for breakfast. There's like Pop Tarts or donuts, right? Like, so I need to take my protein with me. When we travel, when we went to Italy, I took my protein powder with me because you never know what you're going to have access to. And even if you have access to a couple of eggs in the morning, that's 12 grams of protein. That is not going to help balance your blood sugar for the morning. And it's important that I start the day out that way. So I take my protein powder with me. I make sure that I get at least 30 grams of protein, and then I just let the rest go. So, for example, when we were in Italy, I would get up, I would have my water, and then when we had access to it in the villa, I made little scrambles. So I would do a couple of eggs, and I would throw some tomatoes and some spinach in there, grate a little bit of Parmesan over the top, and I would have that for my breakfast with my protein shake. So I'm hitting my protein. And then I would have, there was this little cafe down the street from us, and they had the absolute best chocolate croissants. I'm not a croissant person, but these things were delicious. And so I would have one of those with my breakfast every day. So it's not perfect, but at least I got my protein in first thing. And that helps balance everything out so that I wasn't messing with my blood sugar first thing in the morning. And then the third thing that I do is that I just eat until I'm 80% full. This is not, I won't say that I never ever overeat, but it's pretty rare. I don't feel a need to. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow as to how to find that place where you're so satisfied with your food all the time that you don't feel a need to overeat. I think there was only one meal that I know that I overate, and it was simply because if you guys don't know, in Italy, they basically shut down in the middle of the day, and we weren't really prepared for that. So there were a couple of days where we're like, "Oh, we're really hungry," and nothing's open. So by the time we get to have food, I was like, "Ah!" I'm like shoving it in, and so I overate on that day for sure. And it was like this giant sandwich thing, and I ate too much of it. But in general, I eat until I'm 80% full, and then I just stop. Even if there's still stuff on my plate. If I'm full, I just stop. So 80% full means could I eat more? Yes. But I'm okay. I don't need more. I will generally just stop because I've gotten to a point where I don't like that feeling of just being like, I don't like that feeling. So I can get myself to stop. Now, these are my three DNCs that I can literally do anywhere. Again, my targets are above that. I definitely drink more water most of the time. I definitely get more protein most of the time. I definitely get more vegetables most of the time. But even in Italy, I could do these three things. And it kept me satisfied, and it kept my cravings, hunger, energy levels stable, and my blood sugar stable. So you guys have questions on those? Now, the one thing that I would say that I did change, and this was a couple of years ago, is I would do the water, the protein, and then I would do my third one was I would either have one big ass salad or 2 servings of vegetables a day. And that worked pretty well for a long time, and I really liked that. The problem was is that I started having issues being able to digest all of the raw vegetables. So I ended up having to get rid of that. And so I replaced it with the eat until 80% full. And that is what I want you to do when you're figuring out what your DNCs are. They are going to evolve, but what I want you to do is start with some basics. So let's come up with your DNCs. And you guys can feel free to jump in the chat and give me some ideas on what you think you could start with your DNC. So when we're looking at this, I'll give you some ideas. So keep in mind, we want it to be something that's pretty simple. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to evolve as you evolve. But we want, water. How can you create a DNC where maybe you're getting water? How can you create a commitment that helps you get some protein in? How can you create a DNC that helps you get fiber in? Like what, and think about like the places that you've traveled or the situations that you've been in where you're like, okay, like I could still do these things. You can use some of mine that I've done. You can create your own. Do you guys have questions on some that might work for you? Hold on, I'm going here. Danica says fiber supplement in the morning. That could be a daily a daily a DNC. So you know what you could do, Danica, like when you do your fiber supplement, you could just to create some flexibility with that so that you're not always having to do the fiber supplement. You could say, I'm either going to have something that has 10 grams of fiber, or I'm going to have my fiber supplement in the morning so that you have some flexibility in that. Does that make sense? And then that way, let's say that you're traveling or you don't know what you're going to have access to, you take your fiber supplement. Does that make sense? That way, again, we want flexibility. We want to be able to have some flexibility in how you're doing that. So that's a good one. I like that one. Anybody else have any questions or ones that they're thinking about that might work? I'll give you guys a few minutes. No questions? I think we're good. Okay, so here's what I want you to know is that this is a practice. You are going, it just like anything else. I think that one of the big things that I get back from clients when they start doing this is they're just like, I messed it up, or oh, I overate, or it didn't quite work. And I'm like, that's okay. That's how you get good at this. Keep in mind, like when I first started this, it literally took me over a year to really get good at this. And I was constantly overeating pastries because they were in my house, and I didn't know how to maneuver that very well. So just give yourself some room for the practice of learning how to make this work. So for today, I want you to focus on your DNCs. That's going to be the big one, and be like, okay, what are some daily nutritional commitments that I can start to work on? I would pick them and start to work on them tomorrow, so you know what they are, and that way by the end of the 3 days, I can help you maneuver like this didn't work, but maybe we could do this. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you strategies on how to actually implement the practice and how to find satisfaction in what you're eating so that you don't swing into overindulgence. I just literally just had a conversation with a client who was like, I feel like I'm going back to some of my old habits which is very common. Like I do really well during the week, but then on the weekends, I'm going back to habits of like overindulging and drinking too much. And I'm like, the reason that happens is that things are too tight over here, right? Like you're escaping from the week. You got to find enough satisfaction in what you're doing during the weeks that you don't feel like you overindulge over here. So we want to take that swing out. And I'm going to give you strategies and actual practices that you can do starting tomorrow to find that sweet spot in the middle. So any last minute questions pop up? Don't see any. I think we're good. All right, guys, that's it for tonight. I will see you all tomorrow. And again, we will work on being able to build satisfaction into your meals and go from there. We'll see you then.